Rob Brown and Brendan Martin here. Those of you watching TV, you got to realize our producer is tucked away in a great town, Ocala, Florida.
Safe.
Yeah.
From the tornadoes.
Yeah. God. Man, I was watching the news. Those weather apps we were discussing are worthless, a lot of them, because it was said light rain in Ocala. But that area, Seminole, Orlando, got hammered, and the Fox 35 meteorologist was on TV when a tornado hit. Man, it reminds me of Atlanta, 2008 SEC tournament when a tornado ripped the top off of what was then called the Georgia Dome. A lot to cover today, folks. Obviously, the tournament brackets are out. The SEC tournament starts mañana, tomorrow. So we've got Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports covers Georgia. They will open up against Oklahoma tomorrow. Also, Jake Wimberly was going to try to join us, had something come up at the last minute right before the show. He is out, but we've also got Yancy Porter from Rebel Yell Hotline talking about Ole Miss, and we're going to ask him. A lot of people think Chris Beard, he's going to take the Indiana. I'm not seeing it, but there are a lot of people that think that he's going to leave. I don't think he leaves. Rodney Orr, Tider Insider, he's going to give us a second or two. Damn, that last second buzzer, they took down number one Auburn. What does that game mean? What does it mean to Alabama? What does it mean to Auburn? Is Auburn still an overall number one seed? Florida, I think, and Auburn are number one seeds. Question is for Auburn, are they an overall number one seed? And hey, SEC basketball, this race this year, I know we're talking about it's the best ever. But Brendan, we heard a lot of that crap last year. But we did get Tennessee to the Elite Eight. Alabama to the Final Four.
And Rob, before you get in a car accident driving out of the driveway this morning, going 400 miles an hour and getting into the topics, I'm going to say welcome to SEC Sideline Sports. I'm Brendan Martin, executive producer. He's Rob Brown. Go ahead and give us a like or a subscribe or follow us, whatever platform you're on, Twitter or X or Facebook or YouTube. Hit us up there. We'll put a little thing up here for you. And go ahead and click the QR code there, and you can follow us on X and get notifications when we're live. And with that, I'm going to say hello to our friend Jordan Hill because he is busy.
So he is Jordan, the man with a plan.
Welcome to the broadcast, Jordan. How are you?
Athens, GA.
Doing
Jordan,
great, guys.
Hey, we've always talked so much football with you. Now we're talking basketball. Of course, you cover everything, including the Diamond Dogs as well. But tomorrow, you got Georgia playing Oklahoma, SEC basketball tournament. What's a magic number of wins you think the Dogs need in Nashville to lock down an NCAA bid? Unless you think they've already done it, but I would think they need to keep winning.
I think they're good. I think the fact that they've won, I guess they've won 3 in a row now. I think they're all set. I think had they dropped either South Carolina or Vanderbilt, they would have needed a win in Nashville. But thanks to Tennessee losing that game the other day, Georgia goes into the SEC tournament with the longest active winning streak in the conference. Now, I don't know that I would have ever seen that coming, but no, I think they've done enough. From the latest bracketology that I've seen, I think they're pretty securely in. You want to keep that momentum going, and I think they got a good chance to against this Oklahoma team in the first round. But no, I think they've done enough. I think they're going dancing.
Yeah, and this is year 3 for Mike White. You think he's on schedule? Does he feel like he's on schedule?
Yeah, he was asked about that after the game on Saturday when they beat Vanderbilt, and he kind of said that there really wasn't necessarily a schedule, that they just wanted to kind of take it day by day. And, I mean, you think about the program he took over. Tom Crean's last year, they won 6 total games. They won 1 SEC game. They beat Alabama, which is still the most amazing thing that I still cannot believe Tom Crean beat Nate Oates. But, no, I mean, he took over a really rough situation. And I think they took the right approach. And Mike was not a guy who came in and said, we're going to win right away and, all this stuff. I mean, he took a very measured approach, and I think that was the right attitude for everybody involved. I mean, if Georgia does make the tournament, like I said, I think they will, be the first time in 10 years. I mean, his predecessor, Tom Crean, never did that. And Mark Fox, the end of his tenure, the fact that they struggled to do that. In an SEC that, guys, it's just not even – it's night and day compared to how competitive it is now.
Yeah.
I think Mike's taken the right approach with how he's wanted to build this thing, taking it a day at a time. And I think that it's a big reason why Georgia is where it is right now.
Coach Ellis Johnson was on yesterday. We were talking football and basketball with him and Franz Beard. Made a great point. If you look around at programs like Gonzaga, and if you in the preseason top 25 rankings, Kansas, Baylor, North Carolina, Gonzaga, those are just some of the teams that were ranked and blue bloods, okay, that have won national championships or been really close. None of them are ranked right now. And he said Gonzaga is just kind of going away. And if you look at the top 25 rankings in basketball, they look a lot like the top 25 rankings in football. And that's where I see the SEC really taking over. And I'm not sure the ACC is wanting to fight for it. I didn't think I'd ever say that.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild how the SEC is taking leaps and bounds from again just where it was 10 years ago. And I always bring up the point. I think it might have been Mark Fox's third year. So this is like 2013, 2014. Georgia finishes tied for second in the SEC and misses the tournament. You're never going to see that again. And I think the biggest thing when I look at where the SEC is now, and you say, how did things get so much better? It's just a commitment from all 16 schools. Look at the coaches at all of these schools and compare that to again like a decade ago. I mean it is just incredible. And I can say too from the Georgia perspective, not only hiring Mike White, but the resources. They've done a very good job of upgrading the facilities. That's been a knock on Georgia basketball for a long time.
Yeah.
They finally got their own workout area within Stegman Coliseum that was not there for the longest time. You had to go down the street to work out if you were a Georgia basketball player. And again, I think it's just been a commitment across the board. And I think you're seeing that. And, I think it makes for a great product when you look at a school like South Carolina. They did not have a good season. But they took Georgia to the brink. They took Auburn to the brink.
Yeah.
I mean, even the worst teams in this conference are going to push you for 40 minutes.
I mean, Florida 70-69. I mean, Florida had to come back and get that win. And you look back, it seems like Georgia turned for the better with that win over Florida. They're up by 26. All of a sudden, they're down by 1, but they close the deal and they get the win. I think that's when the team believed, okay, we can beat anybody. And to say they've got the longest active winning streak in the conference is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, I would have never in a million years thought that would happen. And I'll honestly say, Rob, I think it turned for Georgia the week before that Florida game. They had a bye week after they had lost to Missouri. They'd had a really rough second half of that Missouri game, and that had been kind of a recurring thing. They have a bye week before they play at Auburn. And I think they took that extra time and just kind of retooled some things. They cut down their rotation, and I think they've really let the guards go off. And when you look at the success they've had, it's because their guards have been playing great. Silas Demery Jr. has had a great 3 weeks. Blue Kane has played really well. And I feel like it's not been so much as, all right, we're going to just ride Asa Newell, this 5-star. He was named a all-freshman SEC member on Monday. We're going to ride him and just hope someone else gets hot. No, they've really let their guards come into their own. Silas and Blue both are in their second year at Georgia. And I think having that extra time before Auburn, they lose that game at Auburn by 12, but it honestly was closer than that. I think that's when they figured out, okay, things are working. We're not in a bad situation. And it's been, they've been riding high ever since.
As far as recruiting goes, that Atlanta area, we talk about it every week because it's so critical. Are you starting to make headway, Georgia, the coaches? And is there any particular assistant they've brought in who really knows the Atlanta market? Because you can build a national championship program just out of the counties around Atlanta, in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah, they've really recruited more so the Southeast compared to Atlanta. Now, they've done a good job of like Overtime Elite, which is in Atlanta. Santos Surreal, one of the big time guys they got this offseason. He's really been good. Jackson McVay's a guy they signed that will be with the team next year. He's part overtime elite. He's from Gilmer County in North Georgia, which is my high school, Pickens County's big rival. So I
Yeah.
can't wait for Jackson to get in. I'm gonna have to give him some grief about being a Gilmer guy. But Antonio Reynolds Dean is the guy I would shout out for the Georgia ties. He's a guy that's from the state of Georgia. He had come over from the Clemson staff. He's done a really good job, and honestly, Mike White and his staff have recruited, I'd say, the state of Florida even better than Georgia. And that's because of Mike's ties. Eric Pastrana, who is his lead assistant, who came with him from Florida. They've done a great job of plucking talent out of Florida. A lot of the guys they signed early on at Georgia, Asa Newell as well, are guys they had relationships with for a while. And I think when they came over, they had those relationships. And since they've gotten to Georgia, they've done a good job of maximizing them.
Getting up to Nashville, I mean, Georgia, again, you got Oklahoma in the first game. I think Georgia wins that. They seem like, I mean, they've kind of started to click. Your starting five that you mentioned, Silas Marner. I just keep wanting to call him Silas Marner. Remember the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner? We all had to read that book or suffer through it. But Santos Sarria, where is he from again?
Yeah, he is African. I can't remember where exactly he's from, but he came from Overtime Elite. And he's a guy that the thing that I would say when you look at what Georgia has built, the best thing Mike White has done is in the period from like April to June, where there are coaching changes and he pounces. And Santos Surreal is a great example. He was Kentucky's first commit in the 2024 class. John Calipari leaves for Arkansas. So Santos says, all right, I'm going to look around. And then he winds up coming to Georgia. And two other guys we've talked about, very similar situations. Silas Demery Jr. is going to go to USC, had been committed. And then one of their veteran guards decides, all right, I'm coming back for another year. So Silas is like, I don't know if I want to go and sit, for a year more than I expected. He opens it up. He's a guy from North Carolina. It made sense regionally. He comes to Georgia. And then Blue Kane was going to go to Georgia Tech, which I know Georgia Tech folks are probably kicking themselves because he's played really well against the Jackets. But Josh Pastner gets fired. He opens it back up. He winds up coming to Georgia.
All right. Let's switch gears. Spring practice. Everything's cranking up. But the fact that we've spent almost 13 minutes talking about Georgia basketball is a sign of progress, because I know following Auburn, that's it. I always say, once the fans start getting as mad after a loss in basketball as they do in football, you're going to have a great program. If you don't have that, that means you have apathy and you're toast. But Georgia last year goes 11-2, wins the SEC championship. People forgot that. They beat Texas twice, in Austin and in Atlanta. First game was as one of the most dominant road performances, road wins you'll ever see. Okay, so, you got a different quarterback right now. Carson Beck is gone. So is his car. He's at Miami. That is a shocker that he would leave. But, Gunnar Stockton, everybody knows him in the SEC championship game. Not a great performance against Notre Dame. Georgia's got a lot of things that they have new. They got to find edge receivers, and where are the running backs that you've always had? So let's kind of look at the depth chart on offense first in spring practice, what they need to accomplish.
I think the biggest thing is starting up front. I mean, this is an offensive line that lost 4 of its 5 starters, so they have got to get stuff figured out up front. But I like the options they've got. I mean, they bring back Ernest Green, the starting left tackle. They got Micah Morris, a guard that's played a lot, but's finally going to get a chance to start. Seeing how Gunnar gets on the same page with these receivers, really from last year, you got Dylan Bell back, and then you've got a couple of either sophomores or redshirt freshmen in Nitro Tuggle and Sokovie White. But you go get Zachariah Branch from USC. I think he's going to be the leading receiver. You got Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. Then you bring back Colby Young, who had been suspended for the majority of last season. Those are guys to watch. Now, tight end, you're good there. Oscar Delp's back. Lawson Lucky's back. And then running back, Nate Frazier's back. He was their leading rusher. they got to have a number 2 back step up behind him. And the thing really is just availability, because I'd say Roderick Robinson is your best bet, but he hurt his ankle getting ready for the Sugar Bowl, wound up missing the Sugar Bowl. Need him healthy. Branson Robinson, another guy that last 2 years have just been banged up, need him healthy. They've got good options in the running back room, but they need somebody to step up behind Nate Frazier, and that's going to be a big part of the conversation during spring ball.
What about incoming freshmen in this class? Because Georgia was all. I mean, when have they not under Kirby been top 3 nationally?
Yeah, they signed the number 3 class. Looking on the offense, the guys that I would say to keep an eye on during spring ball: Talon Taylor, a wide receiver that a lot of folks are super excited about. Juan Gaston, an offensive tackle that in our last 24/7 Sports recruiting rankings, he got bumped up to a 5-star. And then going, really, I think defense is where you might see some more of the freshmen really shine. And I got to start with Elijah Griffin. 5-star, I believe he was the highest rated Georgia signee, interior defensive lineman. And that is where Georgia desperately needs someone to stand out. But other guys to keep an eye on: Todd Robinson, a safety they got from Valdosta. People are really excited about him. Zayden Walker, a guy they got from South Georgia, a guy that was the number 1 inside linebacker. They expect big things from him. And 3 edge rushers, 3 outside linebackers they signed, led by Isaiah Gibson. They're going to have a new starting outside linebacker, and I think one of those true freshmen are going to give the others all they can handle.
Looking at the SEC this year around the league, who has a dominant quarterback other than, well, we think Arch Griffin is going to be great. He's played some at Texas, but there are a lot of new faces in the SEC at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like they're starting over. I think the guy that I'm the most interested in is at Tennessee and Nico. I mean, I think that if he is going to be what everybody thinks he can be, this has got to be the year. Not only because he's had the experience now, he was the starting quarterback last year. He's going to be a redshirt sophomore. But like you said, Rob, I mean, the rest of the conference is kind of starting over, or the majority of them. There's some other established guys. DJ Lagway's got a great opportunity at Florida, I think, as well. But Nico's the guy I want to watch, because I wasn't really all that impressed when I watched him against Georgia. And if he's going to live up to all the hype, this is going to be the year to do it.
Well, if you go back last year in SEC games, I think he averaged, 169 yards passing, 207 in those non-conference games, something along that line. I think he's good, but yeah, here's the problem. We're looking at the $8 million NIL tag, and that's, I guess, $2 million paid incrementally as long as he stays. But he's not going to have Dylan Sampson. I'm just, and we don't know if Lagway's hurt right now. Brendan, do you want to shed any light on that other than what we've already been told?
No, excuse me. There's nothing to really talk about. We're not going to hear the truth anyway. So
that's right.
You keep talking about like I know Lagway. I don't know Lagway. I mean,
he's calling him for breakfast this morning.
Yeah, I will shout out to Lenoris Sellers at South Carolina. I was very impressed with him last season.
Yeah.
I think DJ's just nursing that shoulder thing, and we'll find out more about that. But again, I think it's just spring ball, right?
Yeah, it's a long way to go. But Jordan, before you go, this conversation about Georgia football, 4 of 5 starters got to be replaced on the offensive line. You go back a couple of years ago, that great photograph, the big red wall, and you've had Matt Luke coaching over there on the offensive line, and he's at Clemson now. But it's hard to offhand name the All-American starting offensive lineman at any school, because it takes longer to develop offensive linemen, I think, than any other position. Do you feel confident? And let's talk about who the assistant coach is in charge of the offensive line at Georgia, because if that comes together, everything else can be, given some time to come along. If not, it can be a disaster.
Rob, this might be a name you remember, in Stacey Searles as the offensive line
That's
coach.
Right. That's right. I know that.
Former Auburn Tiger. But no, I mean, that to me, that is the key of this entire offense, because that offensive line, again, one that's going to have 4 guys drafted, one that's probably going to have a few guys drafted pretty high in April. They were underwhelming last year. They did not run block well. They did not pass protect all that well. I think they wound up giving up about twice as many sacks this past season as they did the one before it. There was just a disconnect. It's to the point that some people thought that Stacy might wind up leaving, but he's back for another year, and this is on him to get these guys up to speed to make the most of this line. Again, they're going to be working with a first-time starting quarterback. They need to get him comfortable, give him time. It's going to be a group to watch during spring ball.
Out of Tryon, Georgia, Stacy Searles. I think I've got a a tooth killing me, and I'm telling you, it's so much. I know that. I know he's the offensive line coach. But here's a question you got to ask the quarterback room. You know, Gunnar Stockton, he's a North Georgia kid from Rabun County, I think. Bottom line, you need backup because the SEC, we have an 8-game. We're gonna go to a 9-game schedule. I'm pretty sure we are. But let's go back again. Who are the backups? Because it's hard to keep a high 4 or 5-star around anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Puglisi, a redshirt freshman, and this is one of those things where they kind of have to toe the line and be careful during spring ball because there's not a lot of depth, Rob. We got Ryan Puglisi, as I mentioned. They've got Hezekiah Millender, a guy from Clark Central just down the street here in Athens. He's a true freshman. And that's really it because they got Ryan Montgomery that they signed also in this 2025 class.
Yeah.
He tore his ACL back in August. I'm sure he's not going to be able to do much. And then you might have to go the Stetson Bennett walk-on route where you got Coulter Ginn, Colin Drake, a couple of walk-ons. I'm sure we're going to see them. But, yeah, they're in a situation. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia tried to go get an experienced backup quarterback after spring practice is done. But yeah, they don't have a lot of depth after losing Jaden Rashada to the portal. They're pretty thin behind Gunnar Stockton.
But I don't think they're any different than the other schools. That's the problem. I mean, look across the board. You don't have 3 and 4 really good ones in the room.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Brendan, were you wanting to?
No, I was curious about the Rashada deal. I hadn't heard much of the details, but he went into the portal and off to another school to underwhelm everyone.
He has not picked another school. He decided he was going to just train during the spring and see what's available. Probably for the best, I'd say. After spring ball, but yeah, he's still waiting. I
mean, clearly he's got talent. You know, he could get picked up somewhere, but yeah. We'll see. I was one of those guys. I went and watched before he came to Florida, and I was just so impressed with his arm strength. I just shocked that he hadn't caught on.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, I mean, he's like one of these people now. It's not about how's he doing in practice, how's he playing. It's where's he going to transfer to, and that's a conversation that we got to figure out how to change that. All right, so Jordan, let people know how they can follow you. Are you heading to Nashville for the tournament?
I sure am.
All right, that's going to be an awesome deal. I'm surprised the SEC didn't get a hotel for all the media because I think it's going to be the largest media contingent they've ever had covering the tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be a raucous crowd of sports writers, no doubt. But yeah, dogs247.com, on Twitter at Jordan Davis Hill, on Twitter at dogs247, and 50% off sale. So I would tell folks, if you're a Georgia fan, come on because spring practice starts on Tuesday. Be in Nashville for the SEC tournament, following the basketball team as far as they go. So this is the time to sign up to Dogs247, 50% off. Go check it out while that deal's running.
Yeah, and I go to your website a lot, and there is so much content. But again, X, follow Jordan on X because he is putting out a nonstop crawl anytime the Dogs are even thinking about teeing it up for competition. But always love having you on. Your first class and appreciate all the retweets that you do. Let us know how we can help you grow your brand as well. See you next week. Okay. Somebody got Gator Nation fired up. Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Gator Nation's fired up. I think Gator Nation wants some respect with basketball. I think they get tired of it, knocked around by national media a little bit.
I am with you on that one. And again, I say it because I mean it. They have beaten number 1 and number 7 on the road. Those are probably, you're talking 2 top 10 victories on the road in the conference when it's about as tough as I believe it is the toughest it's ever been, Brendan. That doesn't mean it's going to translate to 3 teams in the Final Four like the Big East did in 1985, but I won't be surprised if there's not 2, maybe 3. But Todd Golden's culture that he's building at Florida, remember, it's just his 3rd year. Bruce Pearl and him are close, but he's his own man. He's not even 40 years old. And when I watch Florida play, I see a team of kids that love each other. They fight for each other. And the national media has been fixated on Auburn, and rightly so. They and Duke. But don't neglect Florida, Alabama, Tennessee. Those are really good teams. Florida's the one team that most teams dread matchup wise, Brendan. That's what makes them so damn good. They've got 5 tall guys that can run up and down the court, and they got a lot of leadership with guys like Walter Clayton Jr. And I just looking at Micah Handlockton coming back and giving up his redshirt year to help his team. They've all bought all in, and not every team, very few can say that.
Well, it takes like that. No matter whatever happens, with NIL, transfer portal, all these different topics that we talk about, it ultimately comes down to team and sport and coaching and fundamentals, and that's what's great to me about March Madness, because this is it's like you had your season, you got through the gauntlet, now you're here. Maybe I just watched Hoosiers too many times, or maybe my dad's Buddy Martin made me believe in all these Cinderella stories and everything else. But it gives, it is the reason that we sort of, watch, during the regular season. So when we hit the dance and you get a chance to dance and your team is there, you get to talk about the breadth of where you've come. And my point is alluding to Buddy Martin saying at the beginning of the season or closer to the season, with the drama going on with Todd Golden and the potential allegations that were levied against him, which has all been dropped and he's completely cleared. Once that was cleared, Buddy talked about how this would embolden any team to go through something early that could potentially have shifted their season. They could have lost their coach. It could have been a totally different situation. They stuck together. They circled the wagons and rallied the troops, and they stuck. And I think that made them believe in one another. And I think that is so important when you're on a team sport. If you ever played a team sport, basketball is very unique that way. And if you can get really close and tight knits like the Gators are, I think you really have an opportunity to do something special.
Well, and also when you think about matchups, very few teams have 5 big, tall players. Florida will crash the boards, but these guys can run up and down the court. There's a lot of sets and design plays, but I think the guy that really makes this all come together is the kid out of Lake Wales, Walter Clayton Jr. Played at Iona. Didn't get a lot of offers. And, Franz and I were talking yesterday, and God damn, Franz is smart. He really is. And he knows these Gators like you do, and Buddy, your dad. But you look at the number of kids like Elijah Martin from a little town in Mississippi. Alex Condon's from Australia. They're from all over. But what gets me is Todd Golden's been cleared of all that crap.
Yeah, that's
and they need to recognize
that's not even a story. I mean,
exactly.
That's not, I think I was just talking about how Buddy said this would embolden the team.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing the fruits of that. So I think that's what makes them, other than everything else. I like to get into the non-X's and O's sometimes and get into the psychology of it. And I think basketball is good like that. And by the way, we just got a message from Buddy. He says, breaking, Walter Clayton has been named to all SEC first team. Alex Condon's been named to all SEC third team. No other Gators received any other recognition. Florida, Alex Condon named SEC Player of the Week, averaged 22 points, 12.5 rebounds, 2 assists, and UF went over Alabama and Ole Miss to close the regular season. Thank you, Buddy, for all that. University of Florida football head coach Billy Napier named Robert Bala as co-defensive coordinator inside linebackers on Monday, by the way, which is football. We can discuss that in a minute. But I mean, Florida's got more defensive coaches than I think they got players. Is it one coach per player? It's like
Yes,
1-1 right now. So
yes.
thank you, buddy.
That's great stuff, man. Look, and I'm that's what I was saying about Todd Golden. The national media, I'm not sure a lot of these jackasses know that, and they just, to me, and I know the SEC is hoping to get 3 1s. I think the conference will get 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a lot. I read these comments. Joe Blackburn, not sure where he's from.
Joe's a big Gator. He's a good guy. He's he's in the family.
Yeah, I see him all the time on here. The only 2 teams that concern me are the Vols. They play lockdown D and Cooper Flag. Well, with Duke, Cooper Flag's a hell of a player, but quad 1 wins, quad 1 opponents. I think Kevin Skarbinski took Duke and their record and who they've played and all, and it was like the 10th or 11th in the SEC. They're not getting the ranked versus ranked opponents, and that's a big deal. I want to say something before Yancy Porter from Rebel Yell Hotline joins us about Winter Timber Outdoors. Again, it is turkey season, but whatever the season, they've got you covered at Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama, growing in the footprint of the Southeastern Conference, and they are going to be a big player in that market. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns, all the top names that you are familiar with, and they've got the ammunition. Get the Migra turkey loads, okay? They are lethal. Box calls, slate calls. Doug Dean, our good friend, hunts over in the Black Belt on the Cahaba River, and he likes the diaphragm call, but they've got everything you need, gear from head to toe, socks, long underwear, hats, gloves, glasses, coolers. They've got you covered. Yeti, everything Yeti makes. It's a great store under construction in Auburn now and coming to a town in the SEC near you. Brendan, when I look at the SEC and I think about Tennessee, I think they're 12-6, and they're really good, but they play great defense, but they don't always have the offense to go along with it. To me, what travels, we all know defense travels, but you got to score. In the NCAA tournament, a team like Alabama, they love to run it. They like to make a shot within 10 seconds of a change of possession. When you look at Florida, they've got big guys that can run up and down the court and play with their backs to the basket even, which is a rarity in today's world. So I'm not ready to start picking my brackets because they're not out yet. But
no, they're not. But this is we've got plenty of good speculation. SEC.com has got some preliminary looks at of what it's going to be. The brackets came out. I thought they came out today, Rod. Didn't they come out this morning?
Brackets are out. Yeah.
Yeah, the brackets are out. Those are our brackets from today. Stop texting my father.
No, I'm not. I was looking for the brackets, but the brackets are out. I know Georgia plays.
That's what I was showing you, dog.
Texas plays Vanderbilt.
Right. Yeah.
And
see?
Texas,
Vanderbilt, South Carolina, you got Arkansas, then you got LSU, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Georgia. And 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then that breaks out the next game. So those are the first. Everyone's got the bye. So it's going to be real interesting when we get going on this whole thing.
Did you see the interview with John Calipari? It's all over X, saying, I didn't really care about the SEC tournament. That's why we won it so many times. Right. I mean, he's saying that, like tongue in cheek, but you can't get if you get too worked up about something and you put it out there, something bad's going to happen. That's what you're putting out there. You should only allow yourself to put out positive thoughts. He is a great psychologist.
Well, he's
Golden's very similar in that respect.
I think everyone gets overhyped because of football. We get overhyped about the SEC tournament and basketball, and it's I think you just got to learn to get seated and get your way to the dance. Sometimes it doesn't work to your advantage to win the SEC. Let's bring in Yancy Porter. Yancy, welcome to the broadcast, sir. How are you today?
How's everybody doing?
Howdy, toddy.
We just We're just sitting here looking at the Southeastern Conference tournament bracket, which
Yeah.
is not much to it. And you want to talk about what's going over there at the Mississippi and what they're
Well, I
looking at.
mean, to look right now, I hate to tell this to your Auburn compadre next to you over there, but Florida's just they're playing on a different level than
They
everybody
are.
right now. Now, whether that carries over to this tournament, maybe they don't want to go. Maybe they're not going to put a whole lot of merit into try to win the whole daggone thing. But they got a double bye, so it's going to be much easier road for them to not have to play many games. But Florida, Auburn, Alabama, those three teams. I mean, I just think those three are the best teams in the country, along with Duke, and three of them are in the SEC, and we'll see how it plays out. It just depends on how much an emphasis people put on this tournament.
Yancy, and I feel the same way. Just Florida's won 9 of their last 10. And all, I mean, hell, Auburn and Florida, they played one time. You can milk that one as long as you want to, but if they played again, it'd probably be a flip of the coin. Bottom line, in a matchup in the NCAA tournament, if you've got size and you can run up and down the court and you've got some shooters, man, you can go all the way. The concern with Auburn is they got crushed on the boards against Texas A&M, not the most talented team in the league. And Alabama in the second half out rebounded Auburn. But that game, what Auburn better be worried about is Chad Baker Mazzara. Love the kid. He's a hell of a talent, but he has got to realize that when you have a temper like him, other teams are going to bait you. It's in the playbook. Every opponent. Pearl's got to get that under control. You don't need distractions. Let's talk about Chris Beard.
Yeah.
Last week we were talking, and there are people out there, this, because he coached with Bobby Knight at Texas Tech, that his whole life he's dreamed of the Indiana job. And I'm looking at Ole Miss, and I look at the money they've got, and yeah, Indiana's a big name and all, but we're in a completely different environment now. Why would Chris Beard walk away from that? And I know you can say, well, look at their tradition. That's great. But in the last 20 years, look at Indiana basketball. And how much different is it than what's happened at Ole Miss? And do they have a collective like Ole Miss has? Hell no.
Yeah. Again, I don't really hear much talk about Beard in Indiana. That's
Yeah.
not It's not really even talked about, honestly.
Yeah.
There were, Patina came out and said that if he were Indiana, he would make one call only to Beard, and that started the hornet with fans on message boards. But
Yeah.
I don't even think Beard's a candidate. I
Okay.
really don't.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this Ole Miss basketball team real quick. And Rodney Orr is going to check in 1 second. Buzzer beater, Rodney Orr. I digress. But Rancy, last night on Rebel Yell Hotline, pretty rowdy crowd on there. You and the gang. What were y'all talking about? What's the theme going into Nashville this week? Ole Miss a number 8 overall seed, which puts them in the top 25 in the country, guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss can win some games in the tournament. Can they win it all? No, they're limited. Their roster construction. They're not big enough, or they don't have enough shooters to win 6 games in 3 weekends. But can they win a couple games and make the Sweet 16, or maybe get lucky and if they get the right draw, if someone in the 16, the high seed got beat, and we've seen that happen in prior years with several schools. Sure they can, but yeah, do they have the roster construction of a Florida, Auburn, or Alabama where you got, 12, 14, 15 3-point shots a game you're making? No. I mean, they're going to average 5 to 6 3-pointers. So they're going to be behind the elite teams, about 5, 6 3-pointers and points right there. They don't rebound it enough as the elite teams do. But they're a very solid, good team. They're probably a team, in that 20 to 25 range teams. they're a very solid team. But they're certainly not an elite team.
Well, and they're out recruiting to fill in those holes.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
So Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, it's only $48 a year. And tonight at 6:30, he and Gary Harris will go into the broadcast on the set at Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa and do another edition of Tighter Insider, nonstop, 30 minutes, 22 minutes of content on Alabama. Rodney, that Iron Bowl in basketball, it's getting to be, Nate Oates is now 7-5 against Bruce Pearl. It's the first time in history that Auburn has won on the road at Tuscaloosa and Alabama has won on the road at Auburn in the same season. That's a first.
Wow.
Pretty wild, but they were having fun down there. The crowd, lots of love. And if you know anything about the Iron Bowl rivalry, there's a lot of brothers and sisters and husbands and wives, boyfriends, girlfriends that go to the other school. So that's why it's what I call the Iron Bowl is about as personal a rivalry as you'll find in college athletics. But big win for Saturday. If you got a second, tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, honestly, Alabama had lost 4 of their last 6, obviously, and it looked like it was going to be 5 of the last 7. Kind of the mood, the vibe that we were picking up here. I mean, I felt like Auburn was in a great position to sweep Alabama, and like you said, you never really can tell in this rivalry. I think obviously Nate Oates does a fantastic job of when his team is on the mat. He has a way of kind of getting them back in line, standing up, and they went down to Auburn and they played in a really, really outstanding game. I mean, they were mentally tough, which they've displayed that throughout the season in times when they've had adversity, and I think that's one thing that could make this team really dangerous in the NCAA tournament. Not only the talent that they have, but also I think they've had some mental toughness through adversity. But at the same time, it's just, consistency. It's a long season. And I think sometimes Alabama fans, they judge Alabama basketball like they do football. I mean, you're not going undefeated. You're going to have bad games. You're going to get run out of the gym by Auburn at your place. It's going to happen. So I think this team's been judged a little harshly at times because Alabama fans thought they were going to be 31-0 right now or whatever. But I like where they sit right now.
Yeah, Doug Dean, a huge part of this show, who's on with us on the round table and on AU Undercover with us on Wednesdays. He made a great comment last week. He said, SEC fans have got to get away from the hut mentality of football and realize you've got a 3-day turnaround. You might play 3 games in some weeks, especially when you get in these tournaments. So that, Rodney, those are true words. But one thing I'm noticing, Yancy, you see it too. Fans in the SEC are getting really mad when they lose basketball games. That's what it takes. Not apathy, but passion, frustration, anger, whatever it is. But that means if you hate losing, you'll do whatever you can to win, won't you?
Yeah, I mean it's it's interesting. I mean, I'm interested to see where this goes with the SEC. We've put such an emphasis. The facilities have improved. Obviously, the coaches have leaps and bounds have improved over 15, 20 years ago. And the talent, which is the biggest thing, is improved because of the facilities and coaches. But NIL has been a big part of this. And what I'm interested to see is what's going to happen 5 years down the road, or even 2 years down the road, when revenue sharing starts, and these basketball programs decide to put their revenue shared 75% into their basketball program, whereas the football programs, the SEC, the Power Four conference schools are going to be putting it in to their football programs. Then is it going to go back to the old Big East type schools, the schools like Georgetown and that don't really even have a football program?
Yeah. Yeah. That is a problem, Yancy, that we're going to have to deal with. And again, like Ellis Johnson said yesterday, the top 25 in basketball, Rodney, is starting to look a lot like the top 25 in football because of the money. Next month, next month, and Yancy's back with us. Next month, we're going to get a decision from that federal judge on the House settlement. We don't know if it's for sure going through, but if it does, it's going to be a $21 million surcharge on top of, let's say you want to get rid of a coach. Well, you got to pay all the buyouts. Plus, here's a $21 million tariff. It's a sports tariff.
Well, Rob, what I'm saying is that the SEC programs they're going to go on a model of 75% to the football programs. When that changes, when you get that revenue sharing coming in, what about a year or two down the road and the 21 million, 75% goes to the basketball programs like the Big East schools and things of that nature? There's going to be so much more money to attract players in those basketball conferences because they're going to have a lot more money in the pool. So I'm saying that the SEC needs to take advantage of where they are right now because there's a good likelihood that the money is going to go back to these traditional basketball programs, and therefore the talent's going to go back there, and the SEC is not going to be as strong as it's been these last couple of years. That's the whole point that I'm making with revenue sharing. It's going to give the basketball programs a huge edge over the football conferences.
That's something we've definitely been talking about, because when you don't have to worry about a football program, Rodney, it goes all into basketball. And Rodney, you go back 30 years ago when Backrath was the athletic director at Alabama. Remember, there was kind of a Cold War on spending on athletic facilities. And you remember that. That's right when you came here with Tyler and Sider, because John Turner and Ray Brakebill and a lot of my Alabama friends were telling me that every day at our daily lunches. I mean, and look what happened. It hurt from 97 to 07. Alabama, that 11-year period, 8 times they lost 5 or more games in football. And the average person, if you tell them that nowadays, they go, "What are you talking about?" They've always won 12 or 13 games. And it can happen. But I will say this, Rodney. People aren't spending money on brick and mortar now anywhere close to what they were, because they're putting it on NIL. And Ole Miss kind of started that when they delayed the $350 million football stadium retrofit and said, let's put more money into NIL. Let's talk about at Alabama, Nate Oates. I mean, this guy's a brawler, man, from Detroit. Not too long ago, he was coaching high school basketball. But you're right, man. When he's cornered, his teams come out, and when you got Mark Sears, you got a chance to beat anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, kind of going on what you were talking about there. I think Nate Oates, obviously, one of the things, just kind of point out what you said. There's been a lot of discussion about a new basketball arena at Alabama. Obviously, that's something the fans want, demanding, feel like it's a priority. But Nate Oates, I think, he felt like, look, the priority is NIL. We need NIL. All Nate Oates, aside from NIL, wanted was this training facility that they're building. So he got the training facility. They doubled his NIL. So you're right. I mean, it's the arena at some point probably will be built, I assume. But right now, I mean, that's not been the priority for Nate Oates.
No.
Sounds a lot like Lane Kiffin in the football. Mm-hmm. They don't want to spend $350-500 million on a football to refurbish it. They want it in NIL.
Well, if you don't have players, I guess it doesn't matter what your facilities look like.
It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Have a nice half-full stadium because you're no good. You don't want that. I mean, these are some great arguments. And again, Joe Blackburn, man, he's right. SEC and Big Ten have so much money. 20% going to basketball in the SEC is a lot more than Big East 100%. All things are relative. But I think we got 357 schools that can make the big dance in March, 134 that can make the college football playoff in Division I level. And yeah, I don't do this FBS, but it's Division I, Division II. I like that because it's simple. But
Well,
yeah,
I wanted to ask Yancy and Rodney. Look, and I don't mean to be Captain Obvious here, but truly, in the end, we've got a whole nother season now with almost two in my bid with SEC tournament and more conference tournaments, and then the dance.
Mhm.
Nate Oates is obviously revitalized Alabama basketball. Done an amazing job. I think one Final Four appearance. Is that right,
Yes,
Rodney?
yes.
Yeah.
The only
Okay.
the only Final Four in school history. Yes.
And he started, I think, 2019. So he's had a good amount of time, and then in the shift with the NIL and all that kind of stuff. How much does do you think coaching matters as far as going into the dance, into the tournaments, and do you think they modify their styles or save anything for the tournament? I'll go with you, Rodney, first.
Okay. Yeah. So, kind of summarize that real quickly again.
Well, I'm just talking about Nate Oates. He's got one experience in
Yeah.
the Final Four, but he's got experience in the past. How much does that matter going into the dance? How much does it matter for these teams to have this a great coach to have experience and know how to coach differently? And do you think great coaches coach differently in March?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's extremely important. I mean, I think it starts at the top, and they kind of take their cues from him. I mean, when it's adversity, when it hits, I mean, there's times when teams, things get disjointed. I'm talking about inside the locker room, on the court, that creates rifts or whatever it might be. And, to be able to have a coach that can manage his players, manage his team, manage their emotions, manage their focus. I mean, this is what made Nick Saban so great, right? I mean, he was on top of these things. It's between the years. I think when you look at Nate Oates, he's like that. He has the ability to say, look, guys, okay, things didn't go our way. But this is where we got to, be mentally tough. We got to stay together. We've got to play to our capabilities. We got to play through the adversity. So all of those things are things that, throughout the season you experience. And then all of a sudden you get into the NCAA tournament, you're 30 some odd games into a schedule, and you've got this to kind of, this is what propels you to the next level. And I think that when do they coach differently in the NCAA tournament?
yeah.
I think, possibly there are, things that I guess come up that does make you coach differently, coach in a different way. But I also think this too, it seems like the tournament itself, that the players just take it to another level.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing watching that tournament and what it kind of creates in some of these teams.
Yeah, along that line, if you don't change and adapt, and if you're holding back anything, you're crazy because you're out of mulligans. I mean, every SEC school has one more mulligan, and that's Nashville. After that, I mean, it's one game, one bad game, and you're out. And that's one shining moment. That's the theme of this deal. Uh, there's a lot of great points, and see, I keep saying the free market's going to fix all this stuff, and I do think it will. Coaching in the SEC basketball. Look, in the 90s, we had some pretty damn good. Arkansas won a national championship, played for it 2 years in a row. Kentucky won two. Florida won it back to back in 06 and 07. So are those the glory days of SEC basketball? I mean, right now, the SEC.
No, this is
Okay.
right now. I mean, there were power
Yeah.
teams back in the '90s, but I mean, this is you got a real legitimate chance to have 13 of the
Yeah.
16 programs make the tournament. I mean, that's
It
unprecedented.
is.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And if Texas and Oklahoma both make some kind of run in the tournament, you could have
Yeah.
14. It's just it's unprecedented. And again, I think they need to make hay while it's in the barn because again, when you get $22 million to share with your
Mm-hmm.
players and the power, the SEC teams, the Big Ten teams, and the Big 12 teams, they're gonna put 15 of that million into the football players. But as soon as this revenue sharing starts, these basketball conferences, they're going to put 15 of that million into their basketball program. And so it's going to give them a unique advantage. And you can't blame the players to go play for, like I said, a Georgetown making $2 or $3 million versus an SEC school making, $700,000-800,000. So the SEC needs to take advantage of where they
Yeah,
are
I
right
agree.
now.
And here's something, Rodney, Kevin Skarbinski on Friday pointed this out. The last time the SEC won the national championship in men's basketball was 2012, Kentucky. Since then, the Big East has won 5. UConn, big part of that. All right, the ACC 3, and the Big 12 2. So you've got to, and Yancy, again, you are right. There were a few teams, you might have had 3 or 4 teams getting bids to the tournament in the 90s in those years, and 06. And remember 06 and 07, Franz and I were talking yesterday. Florida won the SEC basketball tournament. LSU went to the Final Four, but Florida won the whole thing in 06 and again in 07. Man, but top to bottom, yeah, we have never, Rodney, seen this. And I definitely think there's certain core values you better stick to as a coach. But you don't want to go up against Nate Oates because he's a warrior. Bruce Pearl's a warrior. Todd Golden. Find me a coach in this league that other schools around the country wouldn't want. Porter Moser took Loyola of Chicago to the Final Four.
I'm going to say something along with what Rodney said. It was a great point of managing the emotions, the temperaments of the players, the attitude of the locker room. And that is what Pearl does such a masterful job to me from the outside looking in. My ticket's right there behind the visitors bench there at Ole Miss Arena. And there's not a more volatile uh, roster that I think I've ever seen in 40 years of going to games than that Auburn roster. I mean, that it's something to watch those players. I mean, there's fighting and crying and whining and I've never seen anything like it in any sport. And Pearl manages it. I mean, I don't know how they win like they do with as much crying that I see from that Auburn sideline. It's unbelievable. But Pearl, I mean, he just rolls right with it, and he's down there with the players. It's unbelievable the job
and
he
you
does.
pointed, Rodney, Yancy pointed that out when Auburn played in Oxford about Baker Mazzara, about Janai Broome. Yancy knows, Yancy sees, Yancy says. He also, hey, and by the way, Yancy, I got a question from one of our viewers, Earl Scroggins, wants to know, tell us, Sandy and John Black Pavilion. They're obviously huge Ole Miss fans. I don't know where they made their money. They've obviously got a lot of it, but quite generous people.
He's just a true entrepreneur.
Good
I
for
mean,
him.
he does the Warren Buffett model in businesses. He buys businesses that are kind of fading at good value, and he gets some mustard on them and he sells them. They just gave another 25 million just a couple months ago. I think they've contributed now. I think almost close to $200 million. They give $25 million like we buy Big Macs. It's they are really, really loyal Ole Miss people.
Well,
I'll say that.
And Rodney, I know a lot of Alabama people. When I hear people say Alabama, doesn't have the money, I'm like, not the Alabama people that I know. I can tell you they've got some of the strongest balance sheets I've ever seen in my life. I'm talking huge. And Gary Harris, your broadcast partner, love this guy, and he's on Thursdays. He said something a couple of years ago. He said, Alabama people have been slow to embrace NIL because they said, hey, man, we are the pinnacle of college football. Why do we have to pay a premium? But now they're starting to get into it, Rodney Orr. You write about it tighter insider like nobody else.
Well, I think, with Alabama, people says, first of all, you win 6 national championships. in what, 15 years. I mean, obviously he was here 17 years, but in the last 15 years of his tenure, they win, 6 national championships.
Yeah.
And again, I understand it's football. We're not talking necessarily basketball here, but there is a complacency that breeds, and you sense it in Alabama fans. Hey, I sense it on my website. I sense it on signups. I mean, memberships, renewals. When Nick Saban was hired in January, are we okay with time here?
Yeah.
Okay. So when Nick Saban was hired in January of 2007, it was my biggest month in terms of signups, right? The excitement, everybody's ready for change and success and all that. Okay. So over a period of time, 3 or 4 years, you start seeing dips. I'm talking about memberships.
Yeah.
And so I took 100 people, made a focus group kind of thing, and started making phone calls to people who had not renewed, right? And what was the response? Hey, look, it's nothing you did. We love your service, okay?
Yeah.
But it's just not right now. I know we're going to have the number 1 class. I know we're going to be great. So the anxiety was gone, right?
Yeah.
And people weren't quite as interested. Winning wasn't like as big as it was. I mean, that just happens. Unfortunately, that's human nature, I guess. But so that's kind of the way I would address that, is that, sometimes people don't want to. Why do we have to spend? I mean, I'm not really, and then all of a sudden you start not being in Alabama, and people are like, hey, you know what? We got to step up. What do we have to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, there is some truth to it. Dennis Franchione told me this, former head coach at Alabama. He told me this. His wife told me this. I'm talking directly to my face. And they just said, there's a mentality around here. It's the we're Alabama mentality. We don't have to do what others do to have success. And I think Alabama found out, you know what? There might be some advantages to being Alabama, but you have to keep up in the race, whatever it is.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you're not careful and you get complacent, you'll be knocked off real fast. And keep in mind, Rodney, in that 15-year period, Alabama also played for the national championship. They didn't win it in 2016. Hunter Renfrow on the pick play. Clemson beats them on the last play of the game. 2018, you lost to Clemson out in Santa Clara, California. Well, by the way, never play the national championship game in the homeless capital of the world. I mean, San Francisco. Don't ever do that again. And then you lost in 2021 at Lucas Stadium there in Indianapolis. So we're going to wrap it up, guys. But awesome conversation. And I tell you, I love this guy, Joe Blackburn, man. Freedom of speech. This guy's right. And both of y'all are. And Brendan's, I tell you what, this is some of the most powerful content we've heard. But you know what? You got to pay to play. And hey, it's only $48 a year. It's never gone up in price, people. $48 a year. That's
come on, Rodney.
Rodney, I mean, if you ever go up on your prices,
99.
If you ever go up on your prices,
$99,
hey,
Rodney.
Cost,
Listen
hey,
to me.
You know what, Yancy? Cost is only an issue in the absence of any added value. When you got Rodney Orr and his team writing and the sources that they have, you ain't going to get any better anywhere when it comes to covering the Crimson Tide. And Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, Monday nights at 6 o'clock, Sports 56 WHBQ and Super Talk Mississippi. And hey, we'll be on tonight, the Buddy Martin Show at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll be on with Lauren Meadows, Brendan, and the team. So, and tomorrow, our AU Undercover Show, 5 p.m. Eastern on this channel as well. But guys, thank y'all.
Rodney and Yancy, I'm gonna help Rod up right now. We're gonna say goodbye to you, gentlemen. Thanks for coming on the show. You all have a nice evening. Thank you so much. We'll
have
see
a
you
hard
next
time
week.
saying goodbye.
He has a hard time saying goodbye. We're working on it. We're working it.
Night. See y'all tomorrow.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
y'all.
Okay.
Thank y'all.
Now, Rob, we're going to talk about our sponsor.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah, because you missed this last one. So we're going to
Yeah.
talk about Landers. There we go.
Well,
All right.
yeah,
there
let
we
me
go.
say something, folks. If you are in the market for a new car, truck, or SUV, get on out there. It's never a bad time to work with these people at Landers because they're going to try to work with you. If you've got good credit, challenging credit, they will work with you as long as it takes. You can do a lot of it online, and their service department is just fantastic. They will pick you up, provide you round trip transportation. Ford Truck Month, the Ford Promise. It's all part of the Landers experience. Poplar in Houston, Levy in Collierville, LandersFordMemphis.com, the number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South. And Brad Bellamy, the general manager, again, and that team, Kenny Myers is part of Landers now. You know that name. You know Brad. You know Kenny. They're great people to work with, and they're right down the street from another sponsor, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville. They've got a big 50% off sale going on. You'll go up to the front of the store, that rack out front, Barber, Filson, Pendleton. They got a lot of great gear, and nobody has a bigger boot collection for men and women and for kids. And the spring clothes fashions are coming out. Spring is in the air, and you can get out there, get you something for your wife for St. Patrick's Day or your husband.
You buy
your
things
kids.
for St. Patrick's Day?
Yo, man, look, hey, in the retail business, you want to buy this
I
always.
buy a drink for St. Patrick's Day. I don't think I buy clothes. I don't need another thing to buy, have gifts for, Rob. So let's
The coolest pair of boots, I tell you, I saw a pair of elephant boots out there the other day. They've got wild boar. They've got to order the wild boar, the ones that I'm looking for. But proud to have all these great sponsors. And again, the folks at Web-Footed Kennels, Matei's Garage, open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And also, remember, if you need a new roof, mytownroofing.com. Be safe. See you tomorrow.